You're listening to the Healthy Creative Ministry podcast with Matt Curtis. This is the podcast that helps you take your creative ministry from wherever you are today to healthy and effective.
Stop promoting your ministries. I want to challenge you. If there's one thing that you take from this week's podcast, I want it to be this. I want you to be challenged in the way that you're communicating for your church. I want you to move away from communicating your ministries and your ministries events as the primary beginning of the conversation. And I want you to move toward this idea of communicating your mission. There are actually two different things I want to cite for you in terms of stories that I think are really good examples of this phrase that it was really impactful to me early in my career, and I hope it's helpful for you. It's this idea that a rising tide lifts all boats. So the idea is that if there's one boat that's popular, its popularity will raise the level of everything. That doesn't mean that they'll all be equally competitive. It means that it will raise everything in terms of success and awareness. So I'm going to start with our cultural example to kind of unpack what this looks like. And the reason I want to start here is because I actually feel like there's a big miss in this situation. So let me set some context. I don't know if you're a sports fan, so bear with me if you're not. I'll give a little bit of context here. So the WNBA, this is women's basketball, professional basketball. So the Women's National Basketball Association, that's what NBA stands for. So I guess I'm thinking now, if you're not a sports fan, NBA may not make sense either. You'll probably think of that as basketball, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant. There's a lot of historically great players that extended beyond the court. Contemporaries would be probably LeBron James is probably the most prominent of current players to non-basketball people. WNBA is that, but it's women's basketball. So the WNBA has kind of been notorious for being this unknown entity. There are a lot of articles and posts going around saying that the NBA or the WNBA has never made a profit, that they've been losing money and are subsidized from the NBA, all these kinds of things. These details aren't critical, other than the fact that it establishes a little bit of the position of the reputation of the WNBA. The point of any professional league, the goal even, is to have market awareness increase. That's what you need. Major League Baseball needs more people watching baseball, needs more people going to the games. NFL, they need more people watching football. They need more people going to the games. This is just how it works because interest eventually boils down into money. And these are all businesses. And so that's what they need. They need more customers. So the WNBA has been relatively unknown or marginally cared about by a lot of people. There's a player that played in college last year. Her name is Caitlin Clark. She was exceptional in college. And now she has started her season in the WNBA. At the time of recording, 3 games have played. She's played 3 professional games. There is an unfathomable amount of hype around this single individual person now stepping into the professional basketball league that is the WNBA. With all of this hype, there's absurdity. So don't get me wrong here. There's a lot of ridiculous stuff that's being said, but there's also a lot of attention. And like I mentioned just a minute ago, a lot of attention means a lot of money, an influx of money. One of the really practical ways that this has already been expressing itself, some people are excited about watching Caitlin Clark play. So many people are excited that they've had to move games where the team that she's on, the Indiana Fever, they had to move those games to different stadiums in order to accommodate more people. So just pause for a second. A stadium that holds a certain number of people and has been enough for a really long time is no longer enough. That's a pretty clear cause and effect type of situation, right? There's going to be an influx of money because now more seats have been sold. We've had to move to larger venues in order to accommodate the demand. So I'm not jumping in here as a diehard fan. I to be totally honest with you, I have cared pretty much nothing for the WNBA. Like no interest whatsoever. Generally speaking, I'm not really a basketball fan. I love March Madness, the Final Four where there's that big tournament, but that's kind of the extent of it. I don't even have a team that I root for. So I mean, I'm barely invested in basketball. A friend of mine, when the women's Final Four tournament was happening, he said, "Hey, you got to check out this player. He has connections to Iowa. I don't think he went there, but I don't know if his family went there, something. But somebody in his family likes Iowa. That's where she played. And so he's following along. And so he invited me to follow along. And I said, I mean, okay, I guess I'll watch the game. And you know what? It was really entertaining. It was enjoyable. And so I now have drawn some sort of affinity to watching the career of Caitlin Clark. I'm intrigued. I wonder what will happen. I wonder if she'll be successful at the next level. I'm kind of rooting for her. So none of this sounds problematic, right? I bet some of you are probably thinking, I don't understand. Why are we talking about the WNBA? We're supposed to be talking about church communications. I get it. But here's what I want you to understand. The sentiment right now that I'm reading online is that WNBA fans don't want me there. They don't want me to be a fan of the WNBA because Caitlin Clark has been overhyped. And so they don't like anybody who roots for her or for the new team. The term bandwagoner has been coming out. You don't know anything about basketball. There have been great players that have played in this league for years. I mean, I believe it. I'm not denying any of that. I don't think that this new person who's for their first year playing, they've played 3 games. I don't think that they're going to be head and shoulders above everybody. I think that maybe there's potential for her to be great, but you got to start somewhere. So why is it that they're upset that I'm somewhat interested in this league in a way that I never have been before? That's confusing to me. And this is where the idea of a rising tide lifts all boats comes in. So the idea here is that if this person, if it's Caitlin Clark or if it's anybody else, completely irrelevant, if somebody comes into a league, into a business, into a church, whatever, if someone comes into this and gets attention, and that attention helps everything else be more successful, isn't that a good thing? I feel like that's a good thing. I see this in ministry all the time, where they act like these fans are acting to me. A new ministry comes along, and they say, "Well, we've been in ministry longer." Well, that's dumb. That's an incoherent competition, right? Because we're actually allies in the sense that we're trying to move the mission forward. That's what our goal is. Our goal is not to be a church where our men's ministry is the best in the country and everything else fails. Absolutely not. In fact, the success or failure of each individual ministry isn't even on the scorecard. That's not even a measure. We are rooting for people who are outside of the kingdom of God to become a part of the kingdom of God. We want people who do not know Jesus to come to know Jesus. We want the lost to be found. That's what we're shooting for. That's the actual goal. So in this example of the WNBA, extra hype, extra attention, extra revenue, it helps everyone. It doesn't just help one person. And the one person who happens to be bringing it, it doesn't seem like it makes sense to have them be the enemy of the league. That's kind of the cultural thing I'm seeing. And one of the nuances that I wanted to bring up here, I feel excluded. I feel like I'm not allowed to participate in this. And to the point where I don't think I would ever be inclined to go to a game unless it was a home game for this team, for Caitlin Clark or the Fever, because it just is clear to me that nobody else wants me there. There's no way that I can belong in this league. And that's a bummer, because what it's doing is it's actually saying, no, we don't want our boats to rise. We want our boat to rise, but we don't want anybody else's to rise. And so the competition is misplaced. Compete on the floor, absolutely. Crush them every week that you play, fine. But the competition around why people are paying attention to your league makes no sense. Okay. Now I'm going to transition this over to ministry, because I actually have a similar story and somewhat similar experience when it comes to the way we were communicating. And this is a little bit of the charge to you. My saying here, stop promoting your ministries. Stop promoting your events. Stop. Those aren't helpful entry points to your church. Instead, start promoting your mission. So here's what this looked like. When I graduated college, actually slightly before, I was still in my senior year of college. I was an art major, so all I had left was my senior show. So I had time on my hands. I got a job with Mariners Church. They're in Irvine in Southern California. And I was working as a graphic designer in their outreach department. So originally, it was their local outreach team. And so any of their local ministries, that's what I was designing for. If I remember right, it's been a while now, but I think we had like 26 different ministries, and all of them were focused on different things. So we had one that was working with a learning center that we had built in Santa Ana, kind of an inner city area, and it was incredible. Like, it was such a sellable and promotable ministry. It was just so compelling. The way to serve was really easy, like in the sense that there were really great entry points. It was logical. Like, there wasn't a high commitment. There were also high commitment opportunities, but you didn't have to it was just perfect. It was really, really, I'd almost say it's photogenic in the sense that, man, any picture you take is going to look great. Anytime we talk about the Learning Center, there's just something amazing that we can say about it. That was one of the golden childs. I don't know if that's how you say that, but that was one of the ministries that was just really, really marketable. Our job as outreach was to facilitate ministry where we could deploy tons and tons and tons of volunteers. If I remember right, we moved 6,500 volunteers from, not volunteering into an activity or an opportunity per year. That was the general volume of volunteerism that was going on. Unbelievable, super amazing to see it from the front row. Just a great thing. Every year we had one weekend where we had the opportunity to present what we did as a ministry holistically as outreach to the congregation. So how do you promote 26 different ministries? Because like I mentioned, we had the Learning Center. That was so compelling. I remember this because the guy who started it sat in the cubicle next to me. But we had a ministry called Pathfinders. And I remember being a little bit confused because it was a small ministry. I'm like, how many people are you helping? And he's like, 20, 25. The Learning Center is, immediately in my head, I'm going to competition. It's about this versus this. Well, as I got to know him more, the ministry was pairing up a mentor with a student who was in college that was formerly in foster care. So they go through the foster care system. They have now emancipated at 18. They're kicked out of the foster care system. They're now an adult. Good luck. See you around. And they don't have the support system that you need in order to be successful in life or to be successful in college. And so this ministry existed to pair up mentors with these emancipated youth who were going to college. That's incredible. It's such a great idea and such a deep need that only somebody who cares can really identify. That was the part that was compelling to me. I was like, man, you really must be connected to this group of people if you're able to even see this problem. And so I love it. I think it's great. It's a fantastic ministry. But we don't have the ability to promote 26 different ministries from the stage. So how do we solve this? Now we reintroduce this concept because a rising tide lifts all boats. And so as we were talking about this, there was a lot of tension because look, I believe in my ministry. I think that my ministry needs to be featured this year. The reason it's small is because it doesn't have attention. Any of that sound familiar? I've heard that not just in outreach. I heard that throughout my career. My ministry is small because you haven't promoted it. And so this is where the mindset shift begins to happen. So one year we decided we're going to blow it up. We're not going to promote the learning center and the thrift store and the car ministry and all of these different things. We're not going to give you a list. That's not what we're going to do. Instead, we're going to present you with the thing that you care about impacting. And so the way that we structured it was we're going to promote the groups served. And so we promoted foster youth as opposed to the 5 different individual foster youth ministries. We promoted, whatever. I don't even remember all the names. It's been so long. But there were 3 different categories. And so if you walk out, you see only 3 entry points. And those entry points were really core to who we are as an organization, who we were, they probably still are, but like when I was there, that's who we were as an organization, as a department. We were focused on reaching these groups of people. And so now you could walk out and you could say, man, I got a heart for foster kids. And great. And you go to the booth and this is what's so beautiful. This is the example. Like this is a rising tide lifts all boats in action. I'm interested in foster care, or I'm interested in foster kids. Love it. Are you interested in adopting? Are you interested in being a mentor for a college student who was in the foster care system, or anything in between? Now, all of a sudden, we were inviting you into this huge range of options. Whereas if you just went to the Pathfinder's booth and talked to the guy in charge and said, I'm really interested in foster youth. And he says, great. We have this program where we meet once a week with emancipated youth who are also in college and they're trying to get their degrees. You in? And I'm like, I was actually a lot more interested in like adopting. Well, that's not what my ministry does. Good luck. Now, obviously, in good faith, they would be pushing people to other things. They would send them to the ministry that is about adoption or whatever. But at the end of the day, we're making this a lot clunkier. Instead, let's have them come to one place. Let's have them funnel in through our mission. So think a little bit about what your mission is. What is the mission of your church? I like to think of it this way. Why is it that someone is looking to engage? What is it that they're looking to accomplish? And so rather than promoting small groups and men's ministry and women's ministry, instead, what if you promoted relationships? Meaningful relationships, find community, whatever need it is that people are looking to have met. That's what you want to start with. That's how you want to communicate your everything. All of the things that happen are around your mission. What we ended up seeing on the weekend where we bucketed things, where we collected them into these categories, we saw exactly a rising tide lifting all boats. Every ministry across the board found more volunteers. It wasn't that one superstar got all of the attention and everyone else was fighting for crumbs. That's not what happened. Is it okay to highlight a specific need if you have one? Yes, of course, that's reasonable. That's we need more kids volunteers because we literally have none and everybody else is fine. Okay, I get it. That's fine. But understand that those are the outlier conversations. Those are the uncommon or the irregular promotions. And in fact, when they're uncommon, they actually tend to do better. So keep that in the back of your mind as well. But instead of saying we want serve roles filled for these 19 different places, instead talk about why we serve. Talk about the value of serving. Talk about the fact that God has gifted us differently. And there is an opportunity for you to serve somewhere regardless of what your gifts are. If I have 19 things I'm trying to promote and I can only communicate 3 of them from the stage, there's a good chance that a lot of people are going to feel like there's not a role for them. But instead, when you talk about the value of serving and you then say, go get the details somewhere else, I can then walk up and I can say, well, I love photography. Do you have a role for me? I love technology. Do you have a role for me? I'm in communications. Do you have a role for me? I would never say that. I'd be terrified because they would have a role for me. But I hope that makes sense, because what you're doing now is you're inviting people to what they care about. You're inviting people to lean into what matters. The logistics will work themselves out. The men will find themselves in men's ministry. The women will find themselves in women's ministry. But we only present the functional entry points as the ministries or the events themselves, we're actually going to be missing a lot of people that would select something that may not be the headline. This is true for me with small groups right now. So I want to be in a small group where there are business owners, because for me, that's the season of life that I'm in. Well, I don't think there's enough business owners in our church to really have that be the headline entry point, right? But instead, if they say, join a group, now I have the opportunity to have a conversation and say, man, I love that you have these different types of groups, but I'm really looking for a business group. Do you have any business leader groups? And now we can have a conversation. And be careful, for me, I'm talking to myself here. Be careful, because sometimes the answer will be, we don't have that. How about you start one? But what you're doing is you're allowing people to lean in. When we communicate too specifically, we actually cause people to self-select. They don't even give us a chance because they've already opted out, because of how we have positioned our message makes them feel like there's not something for them, as opposed to saying, we care about you being in community. Let's find you a group. Okay, interesting. That's different than here's the 3 groups that we have. So those are the kinds of shifts that it looks like for us. We're moving away from the promotion of individual ministries, and we're moving toward promoting the values, the mission of the church, why something is important. And the reason we do that is because a rising tide lifts all boats.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Healthy Creative Ministry Podcast. This podcast is just one of the ways Lunchtime Heroes can help you build a healthy creative ministry in your church. Stay up to date on the latest by signing up for the Creative Bites email at lunchtimeheroes.co.